Welcome to the Center for Healthcare Architecture at Chalmers University of Technology. My name is Christiana Kaira. I am Artistic Professor of Healthcare Design here at the Chalmers University of Technology. And today I'm presenting our first webinar for 2024 together with my colleague Göran Lindahl. Before starting the presentation and introducing the topic and the presenters, Göran will tell you a few words about our Center for Healthcare Architecture. Please, Göran, start your presentation.
So, hello everyone. Trying to get my camera going here, but it doesn't seem to want to show at the moment. So I'll do the presentation without the camera on. So I will present to you very briefly about Center for Healthcare Architecture as an organization that you may know or may not know. You can go to the next slide. And CVA has a platform as being a national arena for R&D and knowledge development around various issues related to the facilities of care and healthcare. And actually it's based on a development that started already in the 70s. We're today well integrated into Chalmers and also active within teaching and research and running classes in master's level, as well as running a continuing education called Vårdens Lokaler. We're also active in Nordic collaboration within this area, and specifically with the Aalto in Helsinki and NTNU in Norway. And of course also with international collaboration, among other than Politecnico di Milano, Aalto, UCL in London, and Clemson University in the US. You can go to the next slide. So more in detail as you may look at the projects, and a key and important aspect for what we do is the dissemination and industry collaboration. And of course, these webinars are key to the dissemination and building of common knowledge about issues relevant and important to the healthcare sector and the healthcare design. And we can then go to the next area, next slide. And if we want to look into areas of research or where we are active or related to, it's of course design research. It's focusing both the process and the methods, but also the actual functions and effects of the built environment. It's often action-based and patient-centered, and it's done in collaboration with stakeholders within the healthcare sector. And typical areas that are current or ongoing is healthcare architecture from home to hospital, which is of course not just a design issue, but it's related to the whole rearrangement of the Swedish healthcare system. Maternity wards have been around for a while. We're working with that. That leads us further on also to primary care restructuring, and which is related also to the first topic. Green rehab, particularly for older people and elderly. And of course also digital processes like the virtual co-design, the VICODE methods and systems. Forensic psychiatry has also been an area where we've been active, and we can go to the next slide. And one of the things that we do is that we develop guidelines for the Swedish healthcare system through a concept program or concepts programs, which are done for PTS, Program for Technical Standards, which is association between the regions in Sweden to have a common sort of starting point in projects, as we have a sort of non-standardized construction and design process in Sweden. And you can see some of them here. The latest one related to contamination in the public areas of hospitals. Go to the next one, which show an example of reports. There are several more, of course, but these are some of the reports that come out from CVA. They are primarily in Swedish for a Swedish audience. Some of them, one or two of them, are also in English. And the latest one that came out is the one called Perspektiv på vårdbyggande, Perspectives on Healthcare Design and Construction. And it's interviews with 12 stakeholders in the healthcare sector about their idea of what are the challenges for the healthcare design in the coming years. And so it's a sort of a thin report aimed at initiating discussions. I think we can go to the next slide. And here we come to today's topics. And now that you know some more about CVA, I will hand you all over to Christiana, who will bring us into today's topics and the presenters. Over to you, Christiana.
Thank you, Göran. So in today's webinar, we will explore the relationship between the design of the built environment and the stroke patient's need. The webinar of today includes short presentations of Maja Kevdzija, Kritsada Simcharoen, and Marie Elf. They will present different perspectives on the built environment and how this relates to rehabilitation. After the presentation, there will be a discussion among us and the presenters. If time allows, we will try to pick up questions from the public. So please write your questions on the question and answer chat. In case we will not manage time-wise to do that, it will be possible for you to contact directly the presenters after the webinar. So a short presentation of today's presenters. Maja Kevdzija has a background in architecture and currently works as assistant professor at the Faculty of Architecture and Planning at TU Vienna, Austria, in the field of healthcare design. The primary focus of her research is the improvement of post-stroke rehabilitation environments within healthcare facilities. Her research study on mobility supporting rehabilitation clinics for stroke patients, and it was awarded several national and international awards, most notably the 2021 European Healthcare Design Award in Design Research category, and the 2021 EDRA Certificate of Research Excellence and Merit status. Kritsada Simcharoen is an architect from Thailand who has a background in modular house services, especially designed for the elderly. He recently graduated with a master's degree in architecture from Chalmers University of Technology. His keen interest in healthcare environments led him to conduct his master thesis about rethinking how physical environment factors can promote stroke patients in a stroke unit setting. Marie Elf is professor of nursing at Dalarna University and specialized in researching the impact of the built environment on the health and well-being for people, older people, and patients with stroke. Her research group focuses on care and rehabilitation at home for people with frail health. Marie leads several projects that aim to provide evidence on person-centered care, participation, and self-management, while questioning how the environment promotes or hinders these factors. She's a qualified nurse and received a PhD in healthcare architecture from Chalmers University of Technology after she devoted her research to understanding the role of the built environment in healthcare. So now I will let you, Maja, as first presenter, share your screen and start your presentation. Thank you very much, Maja.
Okay, thank you very much, Christiana, for the introduction. And today I will talk about the role of the built environment in stroke survivors' mobility and activity in rehabilitation. As my research is mostly focused on rehabilitation centers, I will first briefly introduce what they are as facilities, as this might differ across countries. Rehabilitation centers are places where patients stay after a stroke and after their acute hospital stay, usually as inpatients for several weeks to several months, later potentially also as outpatient. These are large multi-story facilities with around 200 to 250 beds, where patients undergo intensive multidisciplinary therapy each day to recover the functions that they lost after a stroke, and also to attempt to return home to live as independently as possible. It is also important to note that many of the post-stroke impairments could be relevant to the design of rehabilitation environment and how patients experience them, such as motor impairments, cognitive impairments, visual and speech impairments, etc. The main focus of my research so far was on motor impairments after a stroke, and this will also be the focus of my talk today, but I'm considering other impairments in ongoing research. In this research that I will talk about today, I looked at what patients do in rehabilitation centers and how the built environment might hinder or support their activities and mobility. And before I talk about patients' activities in rehabilitation centers, it is important to briefly mention how their usual daily schedule looks like. And this would be a very general overview of their daily schedule with 3 meals, 2 therapy time slots, and free time in the evening. And of course, there is always a lot of free time during meal and therapy slots as well, depending on patients' individual schedules. And the meals can be taken in different locations, depending on patients' health states. This can be their room, dining room on the ward. It can be main cafeteria for patients that is usually on the ground floor of the building. Now that this is clear, I will talk about some interesting results from my research conducted in 7 rehabilitation clinics where I shadowed stroke patients. First, I started the investigation looking into how patients use their time, how much time is spent where, and for what kind of activities. And I made a distinction between scheduled activities or where patients have to go, such as therapies, diagnostics, etc., and non-scheduled or free time activities. It is very clear that most free time is spent in the room. This is, of course, not beneficial for the patient's recovery, and it goes against clinical guidelines to avoid bed rest and promote activity. Scheduled activities are obviously very dominant, and spaces that are visited for free time activities outside of the room are mainly the outdoor space, followed by corridor, living room on the ward, and the cafeteria, which you can see in orange. And the most commonly reported mobility barrier in the built environment, according to patient shadowing, patient survey, and staff survey, was challenging wayfinding, followed by dimensions, mainly width of corridor, distances between spaces, floor surfaces, as well as various physical obstacles, such as, for example, heavy doors or equipment left in the corridor. Wayfinding could be a challenge due to complex layouts of the centers and therapy rooms that are scattered on different floors and in different areas of the building. What is interesting is that rehabilitation centers, as you can see on the image on the right, adopted very different signage strategies, from color coding to very minimalistic design. And despite these different approaches, wayfinding was still a problem in all centers. But they were less frequent in buildings with simpler radial layouts with one main vertical core, like examples on top. Patients' cognitive impairments are also certainly contributing factor here, as all shadowed patients were already staying in the centers for some time. This was not their first time looking for therapy. I also found that greater distances between various spaces that patients had to reach were related to higher number of encountered mobility barriers and greater dependence on staff. And this was true for all the patients with different mobility levels. But what was different between patients using a wheelchair compared to other patients that could walk or independently or with the use of a walker was the higher number of routes on which they encounter a mobility barrier or needed help. It is also clear that patients in their free time chose to go to places that are less far away from their patient room, as seen above this orange arrow, compared to scheduled appointments such as therapies, that is shown with the blue arrow. And previously I already mentioned that free time activity of patients was very low in frequency compared to scheduled activities, which is also visible again in this table. Non-scheduled activities are shown in orange again. And you can see that non-scheduled activities indoors are very low in frequency. But if you pay attention to the frequency of activity, the rehab center, called here Center F, was the center where significantly more free time activity happened compared to other clinics. And I was curious why, or what could be the reason, or how do people behave, and what kind of space they use. And it is interesting to see their behavior here on the floor plan, as most of their activity is happening in multifunctional dining and living rooms on the ward. And this center was unique in the sample because there is no large shared restaurant for the patients, but patients eat in these small multifunctional rooms. They're close to patients' rooms, they're visible from the corridor, so patients can see what is happening there. They are also very familiar with them, become very quickly familiar with these spaces because their meals are brought here from the first day. And they eat with a small group of patients. And because each patient is assigned to a dining room where they eat, what I observed is that small patient communities were formed, which sometimes met even outside of meal times. And this might have affected their activity levels in the free time. And even though overall in all centers, the activity level of patients was very low in their free time, I still looked in more detail where patients go in their free time, what they do, and if they are alone or with someone. And most patients were alone during their free time. What you can see is blue circles on the graph, and designated areas for socializing, such as living room on the ward or a cafeteria, were used, but rarely, and patients were still alone in most of the activities. But interestingly, corridor and some small sitting areas in the corridor emerged as the most dominant space where free time activities of patients took place. Even though most activities were solitary, there was also some interaction with other patients, which you can see with this green circle. And these diagrams show total activity of observed patients. But what I find important is also to look at some individual cases, just to illustrate how a day in rehab can look like. And each patient has different activities. They have different barriers they experience during the day, and this is important to acknowledge. And I will show an example of two older female patients, both using a wheelchair for mobility. I chose two very simple examples of patients who didn't visit different floors and areas of the building. And first of all, both patients spent a very small proportion of their day in therapy, which is the yellow in the circle on the side, which shows their 12 hours in a day. And first patient was not observed to encounter any barriers, but she was also assisted to one occasion by therapists. Half of her day was spent in her room, and a lot of time was also spent in the dining room on the ward in light blue, not only for eating, but also for socializing with other patients. This patient was undergoing rehabilitation in that center I already mentioned the center had. The other patient had quite a different day. She encountered many issues with distance to therapy rooms, which are shown in yellow on the floor plan. And all the marks in red show that she had to stop and rest or use the handrail to pull herself forward many times to get to therapy. And this was very much disrupting the traffic in this only therapy corridor in the center. She also spent a lot of time in her room and the rest of the free time in the corridor, mostly completely alone, which is shown in brown. And she said that she was only spending time in the corridor because she didn't like the patient who was sharing the room with her. And these differences in personalities and preferences are another challenge for the design of these facilities, but they're also important, in my opinion, to take into account to improve patients' activity and mobility. And in German-speaking world, rehabilitation is organized in strictly defined phases with different rehabilitation goals. And here I try to propose some kind of a response of the built environment to each of the rehabilitation goals in different rehabilitation phases. Because very simple and barrier-free environment maybe is not that challenging and motivating for people who are at the end of rehabilitation, while it is necessary for people who are at the beginning. And these differences should be taken into account. This was a very quick overview of some of my research so far, and here is also my contact information in case anyone is interested in further exchange on this topic. Thank you very much for listening. Now I will give word to the next speaker, Kritsada Simcharoen. Kritsada, please go ahead and share your presentation.
Thank you, Maja. Hi, everyone. My studies will focus more on a psychological and social aspect on the topic of rethinking stroke rehabilitation, space of tomorrow. The aim of my research is to understand how the physical environment can best support patients' well-being and synergy with staff in stroke units and rehab facilities. First, I would say that there are many types of healthcare settings that provide stroke rehabilitation and inpatient services, and it was different in each area and country. Therefore, my studies will look into a stroke unit with rehab facilities in a hospital. It's true to say that there are many types of it's true to say that stroke patients face a lot of barriers in a day. Many activities and their environment directly affect their well-being. Many studies reveal that stroke patients spend the majority of their time in personal rooms, facing loneliness and lack of stimulation. This issue leads me to investigate its physical environment, including what layout, indoor space, or even the division between private and shared spaces. Our findings are gathered from 3 main resources: case study visits, interview with stakeholders, and related theory from previous research. From the case study visit, visual connections and easy access between the nurse station and the patient zones are an asset. It's not only enhances staff performance and communication, but also makes patients feel more connected. Secondly, it's vital to consider an adjustable and comfy piece of furniture that respond to diverse social activities. Lastly, it's about the integration of colors and graphic on the wall and floor for navigation. Next is from the interview with stroke patients, staff, and relatives. We found that it's preferable to use artwork of nature instead of having TV functions in a patient room in order to increase activities outside that room. The second, majority of interviewers think that a combination of single and a double patient room is accepted, but at least 70% should be a single patient room. Third, a flexible siren area for consultation is required for stroke unit. Based on insight from the relevant research, I select 2 theories to focus on as a design strategies. The first is the concept of a supportive environment, which encourages various levels of social engagement through the use of different characteristic spaces. That is my primary strategies, and I will go back into more detail later. Then there's the theory of the healing environment, which implements various physical factors, for example, the power of the arts, indoor materials. It can also be an access to a garden, view, and daylight. After gathering all the design strategies, then it was a process of translating them into a prototype in a real-world setting. From the southern part of Sweden, I chose the site at one hospital in the Skåne region. Due to its new building construction and its plan of demolishing building on the site. As you can see from the layout, my proposal is an extension building connected to the main hospital with a double H shape. The reason for it is to connect an existing flow to the surrounding area and obtain the most benefits from a nature courtyard from inside. This is the floor plan of a stroke unit. As you can see, the main and service entrances on the left side are connected to the main building. All rehabilitation programs confront the public on the side below, while the patient zone is on the side above for privacy. The courtyard in the center provides a visual connections to nature. I created a single corridor system in order to encourage indirect social activities for patients. As you can see at the intersection area, the nursing station in a green color and the patient share space in a dark yellow color serve as a meeting point and communication zone to enhance staff and patient synergies. With this concept, staff members can have an overview of patients and easily access them within a close range. Unfortunately, this type of layout might create some difficulties in patients' navigation. Therefore, I apply many alternative design elements to cope with this. The first is the use of different colors and artwork on the walls and floor, which represent each nurse station zoning. The second is working on human perception through the curation of unique outdoor, landscape, and sculptures. About the issue of too strict division between private and shared space in stroke unit today, the Patients room design aims to provide the most comfortable experience with a wide range of amenities. This forces patients to spend most of their time alone in their rooms, while the shared space envelopment might not solve all patients' needs. Therefore, I define 4 categories of spaces in a stroke unit that are related to the patient's activities. The first is a private space, where there is a safe space for patients with passive activities. Second is a semi-private space where patients can feel a sense of safety during their active activities. Third is a semi-shared space where patients can rest with a low level of social interactions. Fourth is a shared space where patients can engage in full active and social activities. After this, I'm going to show you how the user experience is in these environments. First, the patient's room is a place where they can be alone with family or with friends. The room's layout must provide a good sight line between staff and patients for safety. The bay window frame the nature outside, and the artwork on the other side of the bed reduce patient stress. The walls and floors are mostly wood with a combination of kind blue colors. And the head wall forest scene make the patients feel reserved, allowing them to have a quality resting time. Second, rehab gym is a semi-private space where a few patients work out closely with a therapist and a lot of equipment at a time. A gym was built with a high ceiling, sound-absorbing materials, and a big window with glass on 2 sides to maintain a sense of privacy while remaining connected to the outside world. Also, a warm yellow color and wallpaper with natural scenes, preferably one represent movement, will count as a positive distractions. This made patients feel refreshed while training. Third, a semi-shared space, preferably a corridor where patients and staff can temporarily share during the day, especially activities that require more privacy. The private sofa, unique outdoor finishings, and nature scenery ceiling give the room a warm mood, like being outside the building. Last is a shared space as a homey meeting place, where it's aimed to support full social interactions and create a sense of communities in patients. A wood material is mostly curated in combination with a vibrant color wall to represent each corner space. Similarly, double space is used in the area to work with the perception of space among users and going more daylight. To sum up, the built environment of stroke rehabilitation is complex by itself. A comprehensive approach is required to consider the physical, psychological, and emotional needs of both patients and staffs. The implementation of physical features and strategies must prioritize patient safety, privacy, and social support, as you can see their connections on the slide. Thank you for your patience and have a nice day. So I'm gonna send presentation to Mari.
Thank you, Kristalla. Hello, everybody. I really appreciate the inspiring talk from Kritsada and Maja. I hope we can discuss some of your concepts further on. I have focused on the built environment and persons with stroke, mainly in hospital. But I know how important it is to create accessible and supportive spaces for stroke survivors outside of the hospitals. Because recovery is not only about physical limitations, but also about how to reintegrating into daily life and communities. Stroke, I just take some minutes about about stroke, persons with stroke. There are a huge group of persons, over 2,000 Swedes, and are hitting by stroke each year, and most of them are old also, so it's a really complex situation for them, and they often face challenges in managing daily activities, adapting to their home environments, and dealing with loneliness and isolations. And after the first treatment in the acute phase, the rehabilitation and support from healthcare services may decrease, and making the transitions back to everyday life more challenging. And rehabilitation is not always tailored to the individual, which also can be frustrating for the persons. We have so many new guidelines that really emphasizes the importance of the home environment for care and rehabilitation. And actually, rehabilitation and stroke guidelines said that expressed that rehabilitation should be mostly done in a person's home. And we need a patient-centered healthcare system with primary care as at its base, closely linked to the hospitals and the community municipalities. Person-centered care and patients' participation are also essential, but we struggle in Sweden to consider the living spaces and the environments. And there is the new reform, you all know that, good quality and close or local care. But I think it will be really impossible to success for that reform if we don't also consider the environment. Healthcare is changing, and I think this is a really good realistic picture of how it could be looked for a person that have some illness. Hospitals are sometimes necessary, the big hospitals, but the care centers and home will be the more common place for support and rehabilitation. And with the rise of technology use, the digital room is also becoming increasingly important component of the recovery. Oh, my slides is going faster than I talk. It's good to keep me in time. I think previous hospital-based research has been valuable, not at least from those that we see from Kritsada and Maja, and also from other groups. But the new guidelines highlight the importance of the home environment in care and in care and rehabilitation, and thus we need to shift the focus to include the role of the living space and environment in healthcare. I have posted some previous research about the stroke unit here. There are some interesting studies that is coming out from the novel redesign project in Australia, for example. Okay, common message in this previous research is that the patients are often inactive, as Maja told us. They are lonely and they are bored, and the therapy rooms are not used enough. And in contrast, rehabilitation at home with support yields better outcomes. I have posted some interesting research also here, this slide. So the role of the home environments is really crucial for an effective rehabilitation post-stroke. First, it is the primary environment for the person to continue the life. And but many homes are not adapted for needs, and that posing accessibility and safety challenges, of course, and they vary in standard and accessibility. And there is a risk also that we have to consider. It's a risk of isolation to be at home. And but we all often also are too focused on all the hindrances and obstacles for rehabilitation at home. Home-based rehabilitation also offers a more personalization care and rehabilitation, and we can use the nature and everyday items and make the family involved in a more advanced way. But we all know that there is a lack of awareness regarding environment factors and how to integrate them in the stroke rehabilitation. A person's living environment extends also beyond their home, and it can be challenging to research as a rehabilitation environment because it's so actually it's more bigger than the home. And it varies for each individual and includes and could include, for example, visiting healthcare facilities, outdoor spaces, and social activities like meeting neighborhoods or picking up grandchildren at school, or visiting green rooms, a garden and parks and those kind of things. I will take some examples from my research of rehabilitation at home. First of all, I have a project that called REARC, Rehabilitation Architecture. To study home-based rehabilitation, we done a mixed method study involving 34 participants, persons with stroke, and we assessed their home environment 3 months post-stroke using observation of the home, interviews, and also self-reported scales. And what we could see that few participants had made some home adaptations for recovery. And also the importance of the physical environment were seldom discussed at hospital discharge. And we also could see that there were accessibility issues, and that those often led to poorer perceived health and recovery, as there were accessibility issues in their homes. And activities that was most limited by barriers, activities most limited by barriers were related to hand or arms use. And participants also reporting, some of the participants also reporting falls, and they were often lived in homes with more accessibility issues. And the study also found that if the participant experience a more supportive home environment, it was also correlated with more accessible living spaces. I have some picture here of some hindrance in the home. Often it was connected to the home's bathroom and toilets, and also to the kitchen, and those are the rooms that they are using most. Actually, it was some of the bathroom and toilets were rather old-fashioned also, and there was also hindrance in the outdoor spaces, like difficult steps and houses without elevators, difficult heavy bins for garbage that was placed far away, and also walk sites that was really dangerous. here, this study is published in this paper. And when we interviewed the person, they expressed that the health professional was directed the rehabilitation process, and they utilized the generic approach with minimal integration of the environment into the rehabilitation plans. And they also felt that they were more informed about what was deemed best for them, rather than being actively involved in making decisions about the plan or adaptations or things about the house or home. We also, and this study is published in this paper, and we also interview staff about how they experience to work in the home-based rehabilitation. And we could see that we were interviewing them, but we also looking at in the patient records. And the staff, they experience both barriers and opportunities. They could identify individual needs and capability better when the patient was at home than at the hospital. And they also said that there were also significant impact on environmental factors on the rehabilitation that they needed to consider. And they also said that the persons were also integrated into a social context, so they needed to engage and consider the family and friends. But they also felt that they had to defend that rehabilitation at home was as good as at the hospital, because the image of rehabilitation conflicted with the place. And in the patient record, we saw that most patients were discharged from the hospital to the home in 4 days, short time at hospital. And the assessments in the hospital primarily focus on basic functions like walk, mobility, limitations, those kind of things. And at home, the focus continued to be on basic activities and little focus on meaningful activities. So there were some varying viewpoints regarding rehabilitation at home. Staff, they said that it was important to consider the patient's home and surroundings during the whole recovery process and take it into the rehabilitation plan. On the other hand, the patients, they reported they have stopped certain activities such as gardening, and it was not included in the rehabilitation program. And due to limited mobility, patients also tend to stay within their local area, and they rarely went outside except for healthcare related reasons, going to another, visiting the physician at the healthcare station, for example. So to sum up, we have noted in our research that the home environment, which can offer significant potential for rehabilitation, is often overlooked and not used. And more focused, of course, on home-based rehabilitation could lead to more individual, tailored and effective rehabilitation process. So that's not good. It's not good that it's overlooked. Most rehabilitation programs are also heavily expert-driven. Still, I will say. And that can also limit the patient's autonomy. It's a top-down approach that can neglect the individual needs and preferences, and including the environment. And we also have observed a tendency to use standardized rehabilitation programs. And those programs can be good, but they don't always consider the individual's unique needs and so on. Okay, I will that was my last sentence, Christina. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Marie. Thank you very much. Very, very good. I think we will now, I know that you have been longing to talk to each other and you have a few questions to each other. So I would like to, first of all, ask you, Maja, since you have been researching mostly about stroke patients or stroke rehabilitation situations in hospital settings, and Marie just talked quite a lot about the rehabilitation in home settings. Do you have any reflections, Maja, or any questions to Marie regarding this aspect?
Yes, I had a question for Marie because I'm quite curious about one thing. In certain European countries, such as where I live, Austria or Germany, for example, where I did my research, a lot of rehabilitation is still done in these specialized facilities, which are rehabilitation centers. So they're not hospitals, but they're not home. And I wanted to ask if you have any thoughts on how could this environment maybe prepare people better to go back home? Do you think that there are still some opportunities there?
Yes, of course. But you see, as you have seen in your research, they are not active. And you mentioned that activity a lot. And activity is really important for those persons to be active at the first hour, actually. And yes, what I think, it depends actually how you look at what rehabilitation and recovery is. It's not only on the physical limitations. It's so focused on at hospital about the physical hand function of the hands and those kind of things. But I think we have to prepare the patients to live with their conditions, actually, and you to be self-directed, to have support for self-management, how to mobilize your social network, and those kind of things is the most important. But so,
do you think that that environment has any kind of role there?
Yes, it is. I think it has. You should be a shorter time at the hospital because it's an artificial environment. You train your arm function in the best cases, but you have to support patients to be self-managed their situation and live with their conditions, actually, in a more home likely environment. And I don't know how to create that at the hospital, actually.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good point.
Very, very good.
Okay.
Now, I was wondering if you, Kritsada, have some comments on this, since your master thesis is mostly focused on a stroke unit within a hospital, although you have been reading about research and post-stroke patients in a very broader sense. Do you have any comments or any questions to Marie?
Yes, to Marie. I'm wondering if after stroke, when the patient's condition is more stable and possible to return their home from a hospital, what is your opinion about the common challenges in home-based rehabilitation?
Yeah, as I told you, all the homes are not adapted to a rehabilitation situation. They can vary in the standard, of course. People can live at the 5th floor without elevators and so on. So there are some really heavy challenges, but also opportunities, more opportunities, because, Kritsada, they are living in that kind of home. So we have to adapt the home as much as we can, but also use the environment as a rehabilitation opportunity. Yeah, but there are some. So really, I show you the pictures of some of the home environments. Of course, they are really varied in standard. Course.
Yeah. Thank you
And one more thing, the social, what people with stroke, what they said when they coming home, they said that they feel lonely and they also feel isolated. So that also is a challenge we have to take into considerations. And you show that so good in what you have thinking about in your in your study.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kritsada, I had the honor to be your examiner, so I know that you have been reading a lot of the papers and research, and especially Maja's research quite a lot. Would you like to have any question to Maja regarding her findings or research on the built environment for post-stroke patients?
Yes. To Maja, I'm curious about what is the most common failure in a design stroke built environment based on your case studies, and please give me some examples. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that question. I already mentioned a little bit of what kind of barriers I noticed in the built environment. The main challenge was always wayfinding, and then the width of corridors and distances between spaces, which were always very long. But I think what is a bigger challenge is that, first of all, we have a lot of existing buildings. Some of them were not purposely built for rehabilitation, and then they were changed to rehabilitation environments, and therefore they don't satisfy a lot of the requirements that you would need for a rehab environment. Second of all, we also don't really have enough research. So even the new buildings are kind of experiments, and some are working well, some are not. And what I found was the kind of biggest question mark for me, even in the ones that were purposely built, was this neglect of communal spaces. So some of them didn't even have any kind of communal spaces on the ward at all. Maybe there was just one sitting area in the big corridor that is shared by 4 wards, for example, and that is it. So there is kind of this neglect of where can I go when I don't want to be in my room. That would be a quick summary. Maybe.
Thank you very much. I think we shared Kritsada's master thesis to both Maja and Marie. And Maja, you were also participated in the final presentation. Do you have any comments on Kritsada's work or any questions to Kritsada in specific?
Yes, I find your project very interesting, and you have done so much research on the topic. And I was curious on what is your opinion? Where is research still lacking? Where couldn't you find information to base your design decisions on? Where do you feel we still need to research more?
Yes, in my opinion, today's research of the stroke rehabilitation environment is pretty well covered in terms of evaluating physical of stroke unit layout, rooms, or patient's behavior as you have done. However, it still lack of some psychological aspect for patients, staff, and stakeholders, and how a design prototype and strategies could develop to the user experience further in detail. It can be a participatory design, I think, and I think this kind of area is in demand now.
Okay, quite interesting. Thank you.
Marie?
Yes, you mentioned that, but it's good if you repeat it, Kritsada, because you highlight the significance of the built environment in stroke rehabilitation in so many things, example. But you talked about the empowerment of the patients, of the persons, that it was really important. But how can the features that you pointed out empower the patients and at the same time manage the levels of risk that is associated with the stroke recovery? For example, brain fatigue, falls, and those kind of things.
Okay, interesting questions, Marie. At first, I would say because the context is complex, so therefore it's important to implement various envelopment design features together. I'm going to give you some short example for each theme. First is about the empowerment. I offer different category of spaces in the unit, which enhance the patient's empowerment to choose the space that follow their desired activities and the level of engagement they want. And the second is the theme of the level of risk. The visual connection between nurse and patients is the most important. So many design strategy that I will work, it's gonna be things about the zoning, distance, and how a graphic, colors, and materials can work, and so on.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a very few minutes left. I think there is one question from the public, which is interesting to Maja, if you could answer to this. You already mentioned that in your presentation, but maybe I missed it. I'm not sure. I'm curious if the results from patients came from surveys and shadowing only, or if you also used the tools for tracking patients in order to analyze their wayfinding skills. Could you answer to that, Maja?
Yes, of course. Yes, the data is based only on shadowing and then conversations with them as well, and the patient surveys, because at the time the focus was not really on wayfinding. It was on trying to identify what kind of challenges they experienced. So I didn't know that this would be the biggest challenge, maybe I assumed, but not really know. That's why I also chose shadowing as a method, because you try to collect as much information as possible and then identify patterns in the data. But I agree that if focus is wayfinding, then this has to be supplemented with other devices and methods.
Thank you, Maja. I think we wrap up now the panel and question and answers. I learned a lot today, and thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us. Of course, my main takeaway is regarding the fact that we are seeing the future of our society is a growing older population, and the fact this population will have many chronic issues or health issues. And we will see healthcare transitioning from hospitals to community settings or home settings, and how that brings new challenges to our profession as architects and planners. That it's us to bring this perspective of health and health promotion not only in hospital settings but outside of them, and what that means and what kind of actually hinders the built environment brings to this transitioning. It's my main takeaway from today. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentations. Göran, I give the last word to you just to wrap up and tell us what's happening next at the Center for Healthcare Architecture.
Okay, there are, of course, a lot of things happening. I think I have a supporting slide somewhere, if we can put that on. Thank you also for the presentations today. Very interesting, actually, about talking about the new hospital, which is actually all the spaces where we live and inhabit, which sort of not just for stroke patients, but also for other care. So there's a lot of integration of knowledge here that I think is very valuable, and from your perspectives, we looked at some of these aspects today. I just would like to ask everyone is listening. I think we were around 50 people here today, which was great, and just invite you to stay in touch with us, follow us on our website or on LinkedIn, and there are webinars 4 to 6 times per year, and also newsletters, and if you want to join them, the newsletters, you do that on our website. The next webinar is at the end of February on well, it's in Swedish this time. It talks about measuring and evaluation physical environmental qualities in regional and municipal caring environments. An interesting topic indeed. So that I think will keep us busy for a while. So again, thank you all for being here today. Do stay in touch with us at CVA and follow the works of everyone presenting today as well. The only way to develop the healthcare for the future is by developing also knowledge. And I think that's what we have been given examples of here today.
Thank you very much.